back. This is another YouTube video. It's not a self-improvement video. This one is another reserved YouTube channel where I'm going to make a public service announcement. I'm going to be making a sports channel that'll talk about nothing but just sports. See, on my other channels, I got so much content, it's not even funny. Like, you can't talk about movies and sports and sex and dating all on one YouTube channel. It's impossible because you'll run out of space. So I have reserved channels just in case if the others fill out of space, or one day they actually get deleted by accident, or YouTube just gets tired of it and just say, oops, bye-bye, see you later. I made these backup channels in case of an emergency. You see, I hardly ever come on these channels because it's just in case of an emergency. So don't nobody be complaining, talking about, man, I can't find your channel. So this one is more of a fun, laid-back type of video. It's something I've been wanting to talk about. I'll put it on my main channel to see if it get any retraction, which there's not even a guarantee if it probably will. Now, this is going to be talking about professional wrestling. It's no secret that when I was a kid in junior high and high school and some part of college, I was a big, huge professional wrestling fan. Other people watched basketball, football, and baseball. I was into wrestling, mixed martial arts, and boxing, and of course I love anime. And those are also some of the reasons why I got rejected by the opposite sex, of course. Not that I'm saying it's every single woman's fault. I'm just telling you that at that time, the stuff I liked, they didn't like, and they rejected me because I wasn't into what they were into. But we ain't gonna get into all of that, because that's not what this channel's for. Now, let's talk about the AEW Extreme Elite Wrestling. Now, the fact that you got one of the executives who works for the Jacksonville Jaguars, or one of the football teams in the NFL, to put up money with Cody Rhodes, who is a former professional wrestler of WWE. He's been wrestling for almost 13 years, and he is the younger brother of Dustin Rhodes, better known as Goldust. And now he has his own wrestling company, his own wrestling empire. And for him to be competing face-to-face, head-to-head with Vince McMahon is been talked about for the past 3 years on the internet. Everyone has made their YouTube videos. And I decided, you know what? When I get a chance to finally talk about it, I'm going to talk about it. Now, here's the thing that's interesting to me. It's the fact that WWE's been around for so many years. If you go back to those 60s, when they were first called WWWF, 3 W's and 1 F, and then closer to the 80s, they would call themselves Worldwide Wrestling Federation, until the Animal Wildlife Foundation took them to court in the mid-1990s. And then around 2001, Vince decided he didn't want to go through all the hassle with all the legal lawsuits, so he changed it to WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. And, of course, that's the same time that the Monday Night Wars ended. For some of you newer wrestling fans, the Monday Night Wars was something that I grew up in entertainment. Back when entertainment was entertainment, not today's entertainment, but back when I was a kid. You would turn on the TV, and you would see them make fun of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, because these were two wrestling legends, two wrestling icons, both greats. Macho Man Randy Savage, God rest his soul, rest in peace, became a 2-time WWE World Heavyweight Champion. He was a 3-time Tag Team Champion, and he had wrestled for a long time. He was going to become a professional baseball player, and he got into the professional league of baseball. He played like almost 3 years of baseball, and then he, for whatever reason, got seriously injured, and while trying to rehab, he met a couple of guys that were trying to break into the independent scene, and that's how his story of the Macho Man Randy Savage legend of professional wrestling started. It started with that. Hulk Hogan, on the other hand, was a guy that was in high school who, I don't want to say he was the high school bully, but that's kind of what he was in a way. He was a bully to some people, And one day he went into a gym, not realizing that there's these two Japanese wrestlers that were teaching people martial arts. And it just so happens to be that the martial arts that they were teaching after school was wrestling. And not realizing, Hulk Hogan thought because he was, 280, 290 pounds, he didn't know that he would get his leg broken. And from that point, it changed his whole experience, and he became a wrestler. And then, in the 70s, Hulk Hogan came in and Hulkamania was born. Now, we went from all of that to my era, where we had Bret Hart, we had The Undertaker, we had Shawn Michaels, 1-2-3 Kid, we had Razor Ramon, we had Yokozuna, God rest his soul, rest in peace. We had Lex Luger. We had Bam Bam Bigelow. We had a lot of good guys at that time in the 90s. We had, what's his name? Doink the Clown, God rest his soul. We had a lot of people in that time frame that would help try to compete against WCW. And at that time, Hulk Hogan had become a 6-time World Heavyweight Champion while wrestling for Vince. And then he left and did some movies and television shows. And then the next thing you know, we see he's working for Ted Turner doing WCW, which kind of angered and outraged Vince, because if he wanted to make a return back to wrestling in the late 90s, he could have came back to Vince, which he could have done, but at that time Hogan didn't want to do it because he saw that there was Shawn Michaels, there was Bret Hart, there was Undertaker, and he didn't want to mess that chemistry up. At the same time, the Nature Boy, the Ric Flair at that time, who was a 8-time or 9-time heavyweight champion, had left WCW after being fired and came over to the WWE in the 1990s. And at that point, Flair would go back to WCW, and at that point, Ted Turner had both Macho Man Randy Savage, he had Hogan, he had Flair, and then Lex Luger jumped ship with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, so you could see how the Monday Night War started. And of course, guys like Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko would jump ship to WWE. And of course, Chris Jericho would go before they will. And let's not forget Chavo Guerrero, the late great cousin of Eddie Guerrero. They would all come, and of course, let's not forget later on, Rey Mysterio would make his jump to WWE. And you could see in that whole entire landscape would change at that point. Of course, we had new wrestlers come in at that midpoint. We had John Cena pop up. We had Batista pop up. We had Randy Orton sign. Brock Lesnar became the biggest star out of all of them. Of course, Triple H was the game at that midpoint. Shawn Michaels came out of retirement to wrestle. Kurt Angle was one of the guys that we had as a star. And of course, Undertaker's popularity just kept growing. The legend of Undertaker was still around. Hard to believe. Goldberg would pop up later in WWE. Scott Steiner, Booker T, to name a few. And you could see the results that when Vince bought WCW, competition was never the same again. Now you fast forward 15 years later, it's 2019, and Cody Rhodes decided he wanted to challenge Vince McMahon when it comes to professional wrestling. Now, I have seen some of their wrestling matches. Chris Jericho's a guy that's been wrestling for 20 plus years, and Jericho got into an argument with Vince McMahon and Triple H like 2 or 3 years ago, and didn't even renew his contract and wrestled in Japan against Kenny Omega. And now, coming this October, we're going to see them live on Ted Turner's network, TNT. This is like a resurrection. This is like a revival of WCW versus WWE all over again. Now, the reason why this is probably going to be either considered a good thing or a bad thing is because TNA has fell apart in the ratings. No one's really watching TNA Impact. I certainly stopped watching TNA. After 6 years, I stopped watching TNA. Once there was no more Sting. Once Sting decided after 12 years of wrestling with TNA to go to WWE, I stopped watching TNA. No Sting, no Kurt Angle, no Kevin Nash, no Scott Steiner. When AJ Styles said he wanted out of TNA, it was the beginning of the end for TNA. TNA was never the same without AJ Styles. And it still isn't a terrible mess. And then he goes to WWE. You got Samoa Joe, he goes to the WWE. So TNA is not even a factor in this conversation. I mean, I watched them for 6 or 7 years. I try to get behind the product. You know, Jeff Jarrett had something good with Dixie Carter, and then it just soured and the relationship fell apart from there. Now, to concede WWE wrestle Cody Rhodes' production is quite interesting. The fact that they had their good pay-per-view, employees of WWE got in trouble for saying good things about that promotion on Twitter. You know, Triple H heard about it, and they did a little segment where Triple H said, we don't care about what the other show's doing, and, you know, Cody Rhodes trying to send a message back to Triple H. This has implications for another showdown. Because you're going to the Ted Turner Network, you know it's going to be a matter of time before Vince says, all right, we're going to prime time television. Hunter, we're going to go take them out. I'm just trying to tell you. And to me, when I see that they advertise this on TV, I can't help but say, you know, it's Chris Jericho. I got to watch Chris Jericho. I watch Monday Night Raw and they get 1.9, they get 2.4 in the ratings. It's not the same. Here I am, 33 years old, and I haven't even watched any wrestling. I mean, the disappointment of Goldberg versus The Undertaker that took place 4 months ago. I wasn't happy with that match. I mean, Goldberg was too exhausted. It was too hot in Saudi Arabia. And The Undertaker was upset that Goldberg did not, you know, he did not become the Goldberg that we saw in WCW 19 years ago. The Goldberg that was undefeated and beat everybody and had a record of 190 wins and was never defeated until Scott Hall beat him. Of course, he used a stun gun, but the point is, he wasn't that Goldberg, and he wasn't the Bill Goldberg that came to WWE in 2003 that beat The Rock. He wasn't that Goldberg. And we thought we was going to get the Goldberg that had that trilogy with Brock Lesnar. That's pretty much the Goldberg that we got. The one that had 3 matches with Brock Lesnar, and that's the Goldberg that we got. And yeah, he fought Samoa Joe. He took on Kevin Owens. We got that Goldberg from 2017. And to see him lose and then beat Dolph Ziggler a month later, it's like, yeah, I'm not happy with that results. You know, we had Sting, and, you know, that was a disappointment 3 years ago. You know, Sting gets his career injured in a neck injury. You know, Seth Rollins did it by accident. He wasn't doing it on purpose. It was by accident. And then we lose the lunatic Fringe, who goes over to where Jericho's at. So you can see why I can't even watch Monday Night Raw. And SmackDown is just as terrible, because if I have to keep looking at Shane McMahon carry the show, the guy can't do everything by himself. Yeah, AJ Styles is there, but then when I hear AJ Styles might leave, then there's no point in watching SmackDown. So you can see how, as a wrestling fan, I can't even watch wrestling. I watch more basketball and more football than I watch professional wrestling at 33 years old. Because I can't stand to watch the product. The product is so terrible. How can I get behind any of these people? And when we get wrestlers on Raw that don't even look entertaining, they don't even sound like they're good entertainers. They don't seem like that if you put a belt around them, that you could get behind these people. You know, so that's my first episode. I will make a part 2 that will go into full depth on which wrestlers, if they were to fight each other in their primes. The first episode is going to be Undertaker versus Bret Hart in his prime. Because I've been wanting to do these wrestling matches of who versus who in their prime, how good they would have been in their prime at the time that they were introduced. Till then, peace.